Welcome to Nashville, also known as Music City, USA. Many people think of it as the home of country music, and rightfully so. But as you walk down Broadway, or as they call it, Honky Tonk Highway, you'll find music genres of all kinds, not just country music. Bars here play music all day long, 7 days a week, and they're called honky tonks. You know what else is pretty fun? There are no cover charges here for these honky tonks. So listen to bands all day, all night, for free. Well, except for all the food and drink that you're going to have. Nashville is much more than the music. But first, before we steer away from that, let's go to an iconic music venue, the Grand Ole Opry. A nice rainy day thing to do here in Nashville is check out the backstage tour of the Grand Ole Opry House. It's the sixth home of the Grand Ole Opry show that's been going on since 1925. Started on the radio, became a television show, and it's on satellite radio now. The name Grand Ole Opry came from the host George Hay, who announced on the radio, "For the past hour, we have been listening to the music taken largely from the Grand Opera. But from now on, we will present the Grand Ole Opry." The name just stuck. Behind-the-scenes tour includes visiting the dressing rooms of the various celebrities who perform here. Pretty fun places to relax, don't you think? We went to the stage where the country variety show Hee Haw was filmed. That landmark show began in 1969 on the CBS network and continued in syndication till 1997. During that long run, some folks performed here that you wouldn't automatically connect with country music, like comedian John Ritter, whom you might remember from the show Three's Company. You can actually stand on the same stage that iconic country music artists have been standing for decades. We're not allowed to take video on the backstage tour, but here are some clips. Remember how I told you that the Grand Ole Opry House isn't the first place that the Grand Ole Opry show was broadcast out of? Place number 5 is the Ryman Auditorium. This was the home of the Grand Ole Opry show from 1943 to 1974. That's 31 years. Some pretty famous acts performed here. You might have heard of one, Elvis Presley. These days, it's one of the most sought-after entertainment venues, not just in Nashville, but the world. And all because of its very unique acoustics. It started off in the 1800s as a church. Not only is the Ryman Auditorium known as the mother church of country music, it's also known as the birthplace of bluegrass, because this guy here, Bill Monroe, performed it here for the first time in 1945. Here's a short clip of Bill Monroe and the Bluegrass Boys performing. But long before the city made its mark on the music scene, it was the site of major events around the Civil War. The Battle of Nashville happened here in December of 1864, and there were about 9,000 casualties, or about a 10% casualty rate. Hundreds of both Confederate and Union soldiers were treated at this church because it served as a field hospital. It is St. Mary of Seven Sorrows. It was built in 1844 with its first bishop, Richard Pius Miles. He was also the first Catholic bishop in Tennessee. When he died, he was interred under the altar in 1860. And in 1972, there were some renovations, and they pulled up that coffin and found that he was basically in pristine condition. The Catholics believe that is a sign of sainthood, so there is a push to make that bishop a saint. It also happens to be the oldest standing church of any denomination here in Nashville. When I was doing my research on Nashville, I was surprised to find out the role that the city played not just in the Civil War, but civil rights. The sit-ins in 1960 happened at lunch counters across the South. They were an integral part of the civil rights movement as they were a way for African Americans to peacefully protest inequality. Here in this city, 3 locations were the sites of these sit-ins, one being at Woolworth's. The counter doesn't exist anymore because a few years ago, right before COVID or right around COVID, the lunch counter closed, but the Woolworth Theater is here instead, and they've paid some homage to that lunch counter. and those 150 students from historically black colleges and universities in the area that got arrested to fight for equal rights. One of those students was John Lewis, the congressman and right-hand man, essentially, of Martin Luther King. Later that year, Nashville became the first major city to desegregate public facilities as 6 lunch counters in town allowed both blacks and whites to sit at the same counter. Walk around the city and you can't help to see how proud they are of their role during the Civil War and civil rights. You see signs like this everywhere. I'd love to show you each and every one of them, but there's so many, so I invite you to come to Nashville and see for yourself. Nashville was the first southern city to adopt a public school system, and it also is home to at least a half a dozen universities and colleges. So it probably doesn't come as much of a surprise that it is called the Athens of the South. In 1897, when there was a centennial exposition here to celebrate the state of Tennessee's 100th anniversary of when it was adopted into the Union, why not have a full-size Parthenon right here in Centennial Park? Now, I didn't get a chance to go inside, but there is a 42-foot statue of the Greek goddess Athena, supposedly the largest indoor structure in the entire world. Now, I've seen things on the internet that say otherwise, but in any effect, it's pretty big. Tennessee played a huge role in getting women the right to vote in 1920. Suffragists marched from the state capitol to here at Centennial Park. That's about 2 miles. To get lawmakers on board with the 19th Amendment, and so they did. Tennessee became the perfect 36, the 36th state to approve the 19th Amendment. So women in the United States were finally allowed to vote. Thanks, Tennessee. Well, I hope you enjoyed this quick visit to Nashville. Hopefully I get a chance to come back and show you some more stuff. But in the meantime, come here and explore and enjoy. Thanks for joining me on Mary Goes Round the World. Here's my tip of the week for you. Monday is a pretty popular day for things to be closed, so try to work around things that don't need an admission.